Hey guys, John Elder here from Tkinter.com, and in this video we're going to recreate a very basic version of Space Invaders. And you can see, here we go, we've got this thing where we've got a player that's not a very good looking ship, and bad guys, not very good looking bad guys, but you can see the functionality of Space Invaders is here. We can fire things, we can fire lots of things, and the enemies are getting closer, we're keeping score, that's fun. And I wrote this code completely with Python and Tkinter. There's no like Pygame or anything like that involved. And it's very cool. So yes, this is very basic, but it's the functionality that's super important, and that's what we're going to learn in this video. So we should be able to knock this out in one video. Hey, we won. If you're of a certain age, you remember Space Invaders. It was an Atari game originally back in the like 80s or something when I was a very small child. Lots of fun and actually pretty easy to do with Tkinter and Python. But before we get started, very quickly, be sure to grab your totally free PDF copy of my Tkinter Widget Quick Reference Guide book. This thing is awesome, has all the Tkinter widgets and their attributes. You get a totally free copy today. Just head over to tkinter.com/widget-book, enter your email address, and I'll send it right out to you, and check it out. And while you're there, check out tkinter.com. I've got over a dozen courses. We've got this Pong game that we did a while back, all kinds of other cool things. You can look through here. I've just added another course to the website. It's this Space Invaders game that we're going to be working on today, but I'm going to go into more detail in the course. We're going to actually use graphics and spaceships and actual, bad guy images and stuff like that, make it a little more interesting, add a little more functionality, go into it a little more depth. So if that's something you want to learn, check out tkinter.com membership. It costs $99 to join. That's lifetime access. You get all my courses. There's hundreds of videos in this website, and you can sort of look through here and see what comes with that. So okay, let's get back to this here. So I've got a file, I'm calling it space.py. So let's go from Tkinter. We want to import everything. And we're also going to need to import random because we need some random stuff. So there we go. So let's set up our window. So let's go root equals a tk instance, and let's give this a title. So root.title, and we'll call this space Invaders, exclamation point. Let's go root.geometry. And I want this to be 600 by 450. This will be important in a second. And let's go root.config. And let's set the background to black. Now we're going to use a canvas for this. BG, there we go, background. And that canvas is going to be black. We also want to keep score outside of the canvas, so we're going to need some black background for that as well, so it all looks the same. Okay, so that's our basic app, and then we can come down here at the very, very bottom, and let's go root.mainLoop. Always want a root.mainLoop, and let's also go game_loop. We haven't created this yet, but this is a game. We're going to have game loop looping, so we'll just knock that out right now. So, okay, that's the basics. Now, like I said, we're going to use a canvas for this. So a canvas is a Tkinter widget that allows you to draw things and do all sorts of cool things like that. So let's go ahead and create a canvas. So I'm just going to call it canvas. And this is going to be a canvas, and we want to put it in root, and we want the width to equal 600. You see, it's the same width as our app, but we want the height to only equal 400. And you'll notice where our game is 450 because underneath the canvas, like I said, we want to put a game score. So that'll give us a little space to do that. So also we can make the background of this thing black, make it any color you want, but it's space, so it should be black. And let's also give this a highlight thickness of 0. So a normal canvas has like a box around it, like a little raised border. And we don't want that border, so I'll just take that out with highlight thickness equals 0. So, all right, now we've got our canvas. Let's canvas.pack this guy. And we don't want to give this any padding. We just want to put it right on the screen where it should go. So, okay, so far so good. Now we're going to need some game variables. And first we want a player speed. And we'll set that equal to 10. That's how fast our little spaceship is going to move around. We also want a bullet speed. And this will be -15. So the speed, canvases is kind of weird. We're going to be at the bottom, so to shoot up, it needs to be negative. So negative, that's not how you spell negative. Negative is up, right? So just sort of remember that. And we want an enemy speed. So how fast the bad guy is going to be moving back and forth and down. We'll put that at 2. And we want an enemy underscore direction. And we'll put that equal to 1. Now, 1 will equal moving right. And -1 will equal moving left. And this will be interesting later on when we look at the actual movement. So, okay. So right off the bat, the bad guys are going to start moving right because we set this to 1. If we want them to start moving left, we would put negative. I don't know why you would want that, but if you did, you just put that as negative. Okay, so those are variables. Now we need a couple of lists to hold our bullets and enemies. I'm going to call our bullets list bullets, and it's just going to be an empty Python list. And the enemies, we'll just call them enemies and also a Python list. So you can imagine as we shoot bullets, we need to keep track of them because we need to know where they are at any given time in case they hit a bad guy. If they hit a bad guy, we want to kill the bad guy and remove the bullet. So we sort of have to keep track of these. We'll keep track of them in a Python list. Same thing with the bad guys, the enemies, as they're moving around, we need to keep track of them because if they get shot, we need to remove them. They're going to be in this list. We'll remove them from the list, basically. So, okay. So far, so good there. We also want to keep track of the score. So I'm going to set the score equal to 0 right away when the game starts. Now let's create a score underscore label. So this will be on the screen. And this will be a label. We want to put it in a root. We want the text to equal, and we want to make this into an F string. And let's have score. And then inside of here, we'll put our score, which will start out at 0. And let's give this a font of, let's call this Helvetica, like size 14, something like that. And we want the label itself to have a background that is black because our app is black and our canvas is black, but we want the foreground, which is the actual text color, we want that to be white so that we can read it, right? So let's go score underscore label dot pack. And again, we don't really need to pad Y this. It's going to be just right underneath our canvas. And there's going to be enough space in the canvas so it won't be like touching. And we won't be able to tell anyway because we took off that highlight thickness border. So it's just going to be like one big black screen anyway. So, okay. So next, let's go ahead and create the player spaceship. Now, for our purposes, we're just going to create a rectangle, right? You could create a little PNG file or something. On the course that I created at tkinter.com, we actually create a little spaceship image. But for this, just to keep it simple, we're just going to make a rectangle, just to give you sort of an idea of the mechanics of this thing. So we're going to call this player, and this is going to be a canvas dot, we want to create underscore rectangle. And that's how you create a rectangle. Whenever you create a rectangle or create really anything in a canvas, you need coordinates. And our coordinates are always x1, y1, x2, and y2. And we're going to get into these in great detail moving forward. But so x1 and y1 are the top left corner. X2 and Y2 are the bottom right corner. So X1 is sort of the left edge and X2 is the right edge. Y1 is the top, Y2 is the bottom. So, imagine a rectangle has 4 sides. That's what these are, X1, Y1, X2, and Y2. And we just put these in here. So I want this to be 275 for our X1 coordinate, 360 for our Y1 coordinate. So this is x1, y1, x1, y1. Our x2 coordinate, we want it to be 325, and our y2 coordinate, 380. Now, if these aren't, obviously this is not familiar to you right now, probably, right? And it takes a minute to sort of wrap your brain around this. We're going to go over this dozens of times in this. It'll become second nature by the time we finish this. So I'm not going to go into it in greater detail just right now. Just imagine x1, y1, top left, x2, y2, bottom right. So x is this side, x1, x2, y1, y2, right? So there you go. And these numbers just correspond to our height and width, right? So, okay, there we go. Now, we also need to give it a color. So let's go fill equals blue. There we go. So if we save this and run it, I'm not even sure. Let me just see here. Python space.py. Oops. We already have an error, TK. That is a typo. Obviously, lowercase k. All right, let's give this another try. Oh, we don't have a game loop yet. Yeah, let's comment this out. Of course, getting ahead of ourselves. All right, so you see we've got our score here, and we've got our little spaceship down here. It's a little blue rectangle, given those coordinates. And above, this is the canvas where our bad guys are going to be. So, all right, we're moving right along. So now we've got our player. Let's move the player. So maybe I'll take this and there we go. So let's create a function, and I'm going to call this move underscore player. And we want to pass in an event here. And this is because we're going to be using our arrow keys left and right to move our spaceship. Anytime you use your keyboard, you're passing an event, and that event has to be accounted for. And that's how we do it. We'll call it event. Call it anything you want, but it's an event, so we'll just call it event. So I'm going to set this x to 0 to start with, right? And we're going to use that to move left or right in just a minute. So here, I've done this in lots of other videos. We want an event dot key sym, and this lets us access the keyboard symbols, right? And we want, what symbol do we want? Well, we want the left arrow key, right? And if our canvas dot chords for our player, we'll talk about this in a second, of 0 is greater than 0. So we got a lot going on here. Before we talk about it, let me just knock this out. We want to set the x to equal our negative player underscore speed. So negative, if we're going left, that's a negative, right? If we're going right, that's a positive. What's our player speed? That's up here, 10. So if we hit the left arrow key, it'll move 10 to the left, right? What is this, though? This is sort of important. Well, again, anytime we're dealing with coordinates, and here, we're dealing with our player, and here's where we set the coordinates, right? The coordinates are held in this canvas.chords, and it's a list. And the list looks like this, and it is, like I said before, x1, y1, x2, y2. Like I said, we're going to go over this a dozen times in this thing. We're going to hammer this in. So this is the 0th item. This is the 1th item, 2th item, 3th item. Because it's a Python lists start at 0, right? So if we call the coordinates of player at the 0th item, that's x1, right? So we're saying, hey, if the current x coordinate, and let me just write this out, x1 equals the left edge of the spaceship, right? x1 is the left, x2 is the right. So if the left edge is greater than 0, we want to move to the left. Well, if it's less than 0, we're off the screen. So we don't want to move any further, or we're touching the end of the screen because the screen starts at 0. It goes all the way over to 600, right? So that's exactly what we're doing here. We're saying, hey, if the left edge, the player of 0th coordinates, if that's greater than 0, that means we're not at the edge. Go ahead and move it to the left 10, player speed, right? So, okay, that's good. Now, elif, and actually let's say move to the left. Elif, let's say move to the right. So elif event dot keyboard sym, see keyboard symbol, equals right. So left and right, that's just how we access the left and right arrow key. So if we hit the right key and our canvas dot chords for our player at the 2th position is less than, can you guess? So we're moving to the right. If it's less than 600, which is the edge of our app, remember our canvas only goes to 600, right? So if it's less than 600, then we'll set the X to our player speed. And remember, our player speed is 10. So when we move left, it's -10. When we move right, it's +10, right? And again, this X, this 2th item, we can do the same thing here, right? Here's our coordinates. So we want the zeroth item, the 1th item, the 2th item. That's our x2, and that equals the right edge of our spaceship. Right? So you'll start to get this. This will become more second nature the more we do this as you go over and over this. These x1, x2, y1, y2 will sort of solidify in your head, and you'll see an x1 or a coordinate of 0, and you go, oh, that's the, obviously that's the right or the left edge. Even I'm doing it. The 2th item, well, that's x2. That's the right edge. Same thing with y1. That's the top. y2, that's the bottom. So we'll get into all that later. Actually, we don't need y1 and y2 for a spaceship because it's never going to move up and down. It just moves left and right. So that is all we really need there. Now, this sort of thing, this event key symbol thing, only works if we bind the keyboard. And in Tkinter, you have to bind your keys. So let's go root.bind, and we want to define the left key. Well, whenever you hit the left key, what do we want to happen? We want this move player function to happen. So we'll call that. Actually, we don't put the parentheses on there. We just call move player. And then root.bind for the right key, we also want to move.player. Okay, so we've got this. We left out, we actually have to move the things. So let's say actually move the spaceship. Almost missed that. We just call canvas.move, and that allows us to move all sorts of things. What do we want to move? We want to move our player, right? This guy right here, which is this guy right here, a rectangle, right? We want to move the player, and we need an x and a y coordinate. Well, the x coordinate is x. That's the thing we started out with 0, and if we're adding -10 or +10 based on whether we go left or right, and we want to change the y coordinate 0. We don't want the y coordinate to ever change because we don't want our spaceship to go up or down. So, all right, go ahead and save this. Let's head over here and give this a run to make sure that worked. And sort of click inside here to activate that thing. And now if we hit left and right, you can hit it one at a time and it goes over -10, or you can hold your finger on the button and it goes faster. Okay, so far so good. Okay, this video is getting pretty long, but we're going to do a little bit more here. We're going to now, let's create some bullets. And we're going to fire them too, because of course we are. Actually, I want this here. Okay. So let's create a function. I'm going to call it fire_bullets. And there we go. And let's create a bullet. I'm going to call it bullet because I have no imagination, none whatsoever. And this is going to be a canvas dot. And again, we're going to create a rectangle. Same thing as before. And so just like before, we need 4 coordinates, right? x1, x2. So what are our coordinates? Well, the bullets need to originate from our spaceship, and we want them to come right out of the middle of the spaceship, right? So what is the middle? Well, that is our canvas dot coordinates for our player of, remember, the 0th position. That's going to be our left edge. But we don't want the bullets to come out of the left edge. We want it to come out of sort of the middle. So I'm going to add 22 to that. So that's going to be our x coordinate. And then our y coordinate, let's just put it at 350. Remember the y1, so that's going to be the top. It's just going to come up 350 from the bottom, down 350 from the top. Yeah, one of the two, whatever. That's your y coordinate. So your player is sitting at 400, which is the very bottom. So yeah, so it's from the top. From the top down, 400, that's our player. If we go from the top down 350, that's going to be right above the player, right above our spaceship. So that's the y1 coordinate. Now the x2 coordinate is going to be the same thing. It's going to be canvas dot chords of player, but it's going to be that 2th position. Remember, 0, 1, 2. But here we added 22, And so now we're going to subtract 22 from that side. So they'll bring it over this way 22 and over this way 22, right in the middle. Finally, our y2 coordinate, we're going to put that at 340. So it's down 350. This one's down 340. So that's going to make like a 10 pixel bullet, right? Something like that. I may have this wrong, going up or down from the bottom. I can't remember offhand if these are from the top or from the bottom. Canvas is always the opposite of what you think. So it's probably from the bottom. So the Y2 is the bottom edge of the bullet. The Y1 is the top edge of the bullet. So let me just put that in here. Y1 equals top of bullet, and Y2 equals bottom of bullet. Okay. And we already know what X1 and X2, that's just from the left and the right. Right? I guess I could put that in there. X1 from left, X2 from right. Okay. So now we've got these bullets. We need to add them. Remember, we've got this bullet list, right? So we need to add to bullet list every time we create a bullet. So that's just going to be bullets.append. We're going to append it to the bullet list, right? Okay, that looks good. Now, outside of here, we want to fire the bullets. So we're going to use our space key for that. So let's go root.bind, and that is going to be the space key. And we need to pass an event here. So we need to use a lambda, Lambda. Now, this looks like an uppercase L. That is a lowercase L. This is an uppercase L. See how it's all white and very angular? This is a swoopy lowercase L, and it turns this to cyan or whatever color that is. I don't know why Sublime does that. I hate that it makes that L look like an uppercase, but that is lowercase. And then what are we going to do? We're going to pass an event, and that event is going to be the fire_bullet function, which is this guy right here, right? So if we save this, it's not going to really show us anything because we're not moving the bullets just yet. But maybe if we hit the space key, now we're still getting fire bullet is not defined. Oh, fire bullets. Typo. Yeah, let's call this fire bullet instead of fire bullets. All right, change that. Get this back. Bring it over here. Now if we hit our space key, well, it doesn't really do anything just yet because we haven't created a function to move our bullets, or really we haven't done the game loop yet, and we kind of need that. So, okay. Man, I really wanted to get this done in one video, but it does not look like that's going to happen. So I'm going to stop right here. In the next video, we'll pick up right where we left off, and that's coming up real soon.